Hello and welcome to IEEE Soft Robotics Podcast. In this podcast, we're going to interview researchers from both academia and industry about their work, thoughts, spectrum, and more beyond that. This is Marwa Edwini, and I hope you will find this podcast useful. If you would like to connect with us, simply send us, and we will be happy to hear from you. And here is my interview. Thanks.
Hello and welcome to IEEE Soft Robotics Podcast. Hello, Prono. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. Such an honor to have you.
Thank you so much to invite me.
Thank you, Prono. Thank you. So I'd like to ask you first how you would like to define yourself for the audience who may be first time listening to you. How would you like to define yourself? How you would like to define yourself, yeah.
Free thinker, CEO and founder of Another Brain. So I don't know, different ways. Yeah. My daughters will probably say other things, but founder of Another Brain is okay.
Okay, great. So I'm curious about your childhood. We ask each guest about their childhood. How was your childhood was?
Wow, a lot. First, I was a kid very bad at school. At 4 years. So in the French system, it's okay. Each country has its own system, but in French system, I was really bad at school, duplicating different classes and being fired because they didn't want anymore to have me. Okay, I'm not proud of that, but I think it's important, maybe for some parents to know that after traveling through this kind of period of time, you can find remission, you can find solutions. And for me, solutions came when I was around 12, 13, and I got some comics, some American comics with superheroes. And you know what? It was terrible because these superheroes able to fly, to be invincible and so on. Well, it was no interest because it was easy for them. But one of them was different from the others. It was Iron Man. I don't know whether you know the story of Iron Man.
Yeah.
But to make short a long story, he created his own superpower.
Yeah.
So in the comics, they were speaking about power transistors. They were speaking about electronic components. So I remember I was 12, 13, and I told my parents, okay, I want to do electronics. I want to learn electronics. I was bad at school, so it was not the possibility to do that. So they paid me by mail lessons. And it began giving, each week I was receiving some components, some books on materials, on physics, on mathematics, and so on. And it helped me getting back into the scholar system. So then after that, I turned into engineer and so on and so forth. But yes, I remember that after this period of time, I was totally avid about science. I want to know everything. I wanted to know everything. I was permanently reading newspapers. I was permanently reading magazines. I bought a book called Wie funktioniert das? At that time, at home, we were speaking German. So it was a big book about everything. You want to know how is working a nuclear submarine. So it was described everything inside. And I spent hours and hours trying to know everything. So yes, after the first period being bad at school, discovering something that gave me interest. So it's just a question of motivation, as always. And after that, I turned really bullish on science and technology.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm curious, as a kid at this time, do you feel different from your peers, or what kind of thoughts? Because when you try to figure out things so early on, what kind of maybe sometimes doubt, or of course motivation, but what kind of feeling do you have at this time that you want to do that? Do you feel different from your peer, that you don't find your group or people similar to you share some interest at this age early on?
After such period of being bad at school, I was not confident. So I had permanent doubts. I got that very, very, very long in my life. Doubts, questioning, wondering, am I right? The other knows better than me. So I always have been very open to try understanding. And, you know, when there is a meeting, even now, when there is a meeting, usually I don't say that much at the beginning of the meeting. I need to be in the mood to understand one the others, how they are, and then I got confident in myself. But at the beginning, it's not the case. So probably with these doubts, and I think it's something that helped me because it's keeping kind of openness, kind of trying to have to make efforts because the others are better than you. They know better what they do. So I had that, and I had a first period of my professional life where I worked in a bank, having different jobs in a bank. And at that time, the idea was the way of managing was to give responsibilities to young people, which was great for me, and to give responsibilities as general manager. That means, generalist manager in English, generalist. That means I was in charge of coordinating people in a business I knew nothing about. So I began as a very very rational engineer. And after a few years, I turned into a head of human resources and then head of communications. So each time I had to manage people that knew far more than me. So I always take this kind of uncomfort, having to listen, to make efforts to try understanding and get the right level. So that means it's part of who I am.
That's wonderful. That's very wonderful. So I'm curious for your journey of being entrepreneur, before going to another brain and also discussing what you have been doing so far. But I'm curious, you are famous for Ultra Prime Robotics and your people robots before being acquired by Soft Robotics Bank. If you can tell us about the story about designing this robot and how it would ease, because I think robotics is very challenging to have a successful robotics company or even in Europe. So it was a challenging for you. If you can tell us about what kind of questions, struggle, challenges, what you learned as well from the first experiences in Ultra Prime Robotics.
Yes, very important. If there is one message, one lesson I got is trust yourself. As everyone, I had doubts, I didn't know, and I was listening to people. So they told me you have to do this way or that way, and I was trying to compose with that too. And one day I accepted who I was with all my bad sides and good sides, and I how to say, I really got free of myself. And then I turned into myself really with all my power and all the bad things, but really doing what I felt, following my intuition, following myself. And it changed my life. So trust yourself and you will see, you will be much more powerful. So it's what I got as a lesson. Was it difficult? Yes and no. We were early period 2005, so it was difficult to raise money. To fund a company, a startup in hardware, because always difficult to fund companies in hardware. And then in robotics, it was early for robotics. So everybody told me, very important, it will be a great time for robotics, but in the next 20 years, not now. So this was the first one. But beyond that, I didn't thought it was that difficult. We had, because I wanted to do that, but we had our own way of doing. To create, for instance, the mechatronic architecture of the robot, meaning mechanics, DC motors, electronics. So to create the mechatronic architecture of the robot, I had engineers, of course, but I had carpenters. So I had people with another mind, other way of doing. And this was important because I always wanted to think differently. I always think different than the others because I didn't know what the others were doing. This is coming from far away in my life. I didn't know what I had to if I was mainstream thinker in which and every field. So each time I tried to build by myself my vision of how to do. And of course, when we are doing that, it's not the same as the others. So you can die. You can not succeed, and when you are succeeding, you are doing something that the others are not doing. So with the robot, we created the company 2005, mid of 2005, and we got the first robot ready, working, unstable, bad quality because it was the first prototype, but 1.5 years after. So that means it has not been that difficult. After that, we had to stabilize and go to a stable one, so it took 1.5 years more. But it has not been that difficult to create this robot. And one of the reasons, in my view, is because we were not PhD in robotics. We were not following the mainstream. Said another way, before creating the robot, I tried to meet with research labs in Europe, in France, in Germany, in Switzerland, EPFL in Switzerland, Fraunhofer in Germany, or CNRS in RIA in France. And more or less, they all told me, what you want to do is not possible to be done. Who you think you are to try succeeding where we tried for 15 years without succeeding? And well, the company leading the world of consumer robotics is Sony. So you want to your small means to do better than Sony. So who you are? Crazy you are. So more or less it's what. So of course I could not follow them. If I wanted to do my dream, I had to do another way around. So and that's why we got in another direction, totally different. So our own way. And for me, it's very important. Either you succeed in your own way and you are proud. If you don't succeed following your own way, you have nothing to blame and nobody to blame. But when you are not successful in following ways of others because you thought it was the way to do, after that, you were always thinking, oh, if I had followed my own way, I would have done differently and so on. So, you know, so for me, free yourself, go ahead, full speed, and don't think more about that and do what you deeply think has to be done, even though everybody is telling you it's not the right way. Okay, perfect. Do the right way yourself. And maybe you will succeed better than myself. I'm not criticizing. But we have to follow our own way with our own energy. So it's what I learned from Aldebaran.
Yeah.
Doing robots,
yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah.
I have another point is go directly to your goal. I've seen so many people willing to do robots. So they were interested in humanoid robots, companion robots, interactive robots. Okay, it's what I want to do. But because it's too difficult or I don't have the means and the funding, I will begin with an intermediary step. So I will do a wheeled robot doing, I don't know what, vacuum cleaning or whatever you want. So an intermediary step. And for me, this is always a mistake. Because whatever the intermediary step is, it will consume 100% of your energy, of your means, because everything is difficult. And if you want to exist in something, even if it's a vacuum cleaning robot, it's very, very tough. So you have to be very good and you will focus everything on that. So you never will go to the next step. So choose what you really want to do. Don't think in terms of intermediary steps and go full speed, following your intuition. And if you need to have people that are totally different than the others, handcraft people or carpenters or whatever, go with them. But the most important is do your own way.
That's very powerful. That's very powerful. I would like to ask you this question, I think, because I think it is easy to say that, but in reality, sometimes if we have the intuition or that I want to decide something and people say who you are, what do you think yourself? And there's a thin line between this kind of believing in yourself and sometimes the doubt, or it's tricky to distinguish. Sometimes I'm going the right direction or not, and believe in yourself. So sometimes you have moments in life you're shaking in your face sometimes because people don't like what you do.
Permanently, you are perfectly right. It's very difficult to believe yourself when the others are telling you, but no, you're not right. It's not the right direction. Because the others are not stupid. There are people you love that are telling you that. You trust some of them and they are telling you. So it's very difficult. But here I will say maybe it's a question of age. That means of having many experiences. It happened to me very often to have these doubts. And finally to decide following opinion of others. It happened to me. Each time you do that and you fail, you blame yourself.
Yeah.
I was sure I didn't want it to do that. I had another intuition, but not there. I accepted to be convinced by the other. For me, nothing is coming from the other. You are responsible of everything happening to you. So I accepted to let me convinced by the other because they were rational, because they are great, because and so on. And of course, sometimes it's successful, but it may have been successful too. So really, it's difficult. So when you are an entrepreneur and you want to follow your own intuition and beliefs,
Yeah.
yes, it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
But I think globally, it's even less comfortable if you are following ideas of others, and you have to make them happening and working, and you have to execute correctly something that you are not deeply convinced of. Wow, I think it's more difficult even. You know, somebody told me when I was young manager something that helped me a lot, and I kept it permanently. Very often in life, or in life, there are no good decisions. There are decisions you turn good.
Yeah.
And I think it's very deep. Finally, do whatever you want, choose whatever you want. And when you will have chosen something, then you go and you make it happen. And if you had made another decision, okay, you will have gone in another direction. But each time you make it happening. So there are no good decision in absolute. There are decisions you turn good. And it helped me a lot.
That's very inspiring. So before going to another brain, after being Algebra was acquired by Software Book Man, and I made success in that point. Till now, what do you believe is missing in robotics field? Kind of question, missing pieces of understanding, question. Because we speak in academia, of course, there's effort, but as you mentioned, people say, well, I spent 15 years and you want to do something, and, which apparently you made it successful. But what kind of missing pieces to make a robot in that customer can use it? What kind of missing pieces, maybe of understanding or question, that is still missing nowadays?
It's a very, very important point, because for me, humankind needs robots. We need robots for many, many aspects. We can go into that if you want, but they are needed. We are expecting them, but they are not at the level we are expecting them, and by far. What is missing? Hardware. First thing. And it's something that people don't really believe today, because we are in a digital world. So we think everything is digital. So the main problem of robots is artificial intelligence. Is data, no. The main problem is that robot has to deal with the real world. The main problem is robot have to deal with the real world, and the real world is messy. That means floors are not flat. If the robot is acting in my daughter's room, there are games, toys, socks. It's a messy place. So the world is messy. If you want to have robot behaving in the real world outside, or even autonomous cars are kind of robots, each situations are different. Everything is permanently different. So the real world is hard, is tough, is messy. And if we want to have mechanics and things acting in this real world, including the robot, we need to have, let's say, soft robots. When I'm saying soft, I don't mean they need to be very soft, like balloons or whatever. But if you have hard joints and limbs, they need to be articulated in a way that you can touch them, and they have to be soft. They have to accept that everything has to be adaptive. You know, so mechanics is very important. We probably have to invent new motors if we want to do robotics correctly. We need to invent new motors. We need to have robots that can interact with somebody without hurting him, and not because of the electronics and the software we will put to make the robot avoiding to hurt people, because it has to be passive. So they have to be passively safe. So it's a question of mechanics, it's a question of limbs, it's a question of motors. We need to invent electropolymers actuators. We need to have that working. Then we need to have sensors. And the sensors is a question that is not exactly, we can deal with the current sensors. But nature has chosen a totally different way than humankind. We have, well, we think we have a great mind and a bright brain, and everything is coming from our brain. So we think that if we provide computers with great cameras, great accelerometers, and so on, then we will deal with these data and we will be able to do that. But if you look at how the nature has done, the nature is doing the opposite. That means if you look at a fly has 3 neurons, I don't know, less than in your toaster, and a fly is able to fly, to eat, to fuck, to behave in a very sophisticated way, without absolutely artificial intelligence, without a very quite electronic control. The nature has chosen the way to have millions of very poor quality sensors, millions of very cheap sensors, and it's a combination of very low quality sensors that is making ability to do all these questions. It's another word. So hardware, actuators mainly, and sensors, and then of course kind of intelligence. We need to provide robots with intelligence, because today first thing somebody is doing in front of a humanoid robot is, hey robot, I'm here, I want to interact, and the robot is not understanding that somebody wants to interact. Well, in some cases, the robot is able to understand, but when you have 3 people or 10 people in front of the robot, no way. So the robot is totally stupid, unable to understand what is happening around. So unable to have the proper reaction. So we absolutely need that. And then the fourth point, so hardware is the first, very important and more important than the others, as I said, for the fly. Second one is artificial intelligence to have some understanding of the surrounding, what's happening around, and then ability to interact with people. An ability to interact with people, it's not a question of Alexa or a question of voice recognition. We all know that, I don't know if it's 70%, 80% or 50% of communication is not verbal communication, but it's the major part of communication is not based on understanding words that the other is telling you. It's what we have with our, let's say, smart assistant. So if we want robot to be able to interact with people, we need to have robot able to really interact, understanding the body language, able to communicate through body language. That means I want a worker in a plant saying the robot, okay, pick this thing and put it here. And the robot has to be able to understand. So because it's how we are behaving. So the 3 things, hardware, AI, and interaction, will make the robot at the level we are expecting. And then we will need billions of robots in our world. So there is a path in front of that. And really, we will need the robot. We can speak about that, but we really will need.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So when you founded Another Brain in 2017, and now you have the new release also for recently in June. So what kind of maybe you're trying to cover maybe by adding another brain to the market so that you have reliable robots that can help in inspection and detecting damages for any scenario, and being also continuously learning as well? How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, the beginning of Another Brain is coming, of course, from Aldebaran and from those robots. Robot nice, great, but stupid and frustrating because they don't understand, so they cannot deliver what we're expecting. Okay, so how to give them this intelligence and ability to understand? So I had no legitimacy in artificial intelligence. I'm not a PhD or in computer sciences or in artificial intelligence. So I began learning, looking, exploring, discovering what was existing, meeting people. And I discovered the power of deep learning. For everyone, for 99% of the world, AI is equal to deep learning, and more or less is equal to big data. More or less, people have that in mind, which is totally wrong. But if you look at deep learning is very powerful. Deep learning opens a lot of possibilities. So I'm not criticizing or minimizing importance of deep learning in our world and societies. But there is no intelligence. It's a brute force of computing. It's statistic, it's categorization. So it's amazing, it's great. Okay, very powerful deep learning, but no possibility, no intelligence, no possibilities to understand. And deep learning is great, absolutely great, if you have a limited number of situations you want to discover. If you put a radiography and you want to discover whether there is a cancer, there is a tumor or whatever, then you have a list of 5, 10, 20 possibilities. then deep learning will be amazingly powerful to discover which one. But if it's an open situation like a self-driving car or a room of my children, so deep learning is not the right solution. So I discovered that. I told myself that I had no value added to deep learning. So I had to try creating something different. And in reading books, in meeting with people, I discovered ways to do something different. So that's why, after having sold Aldebaran, I decided to focus myself on creating something different. So another brain, the goal of another brain is to create a piece of cortex, a piece of brain, but a real piece of brain working like the brain. If it's a small piece, it will be a very, very small intelligence, but a real one that means able to deal with new situations and new things. If it's a larger one or a more dense one with the smallest, let's say, gravures of the chips, then it will be a larger brain. But what I wanted to do is to do a real brain. So this is my focus. And with another brain, I found other people. I found people that are thinking like computer science engineers, but I found people discovered that are thinking another way around, much more bottom-up thinkers and top-down mindset. And we adopted a totally different way of doing intelligence, much closer to social insects, really. So I think the brain is working like social insects inside the brain. So we have that in mind, and when we decided to create this company, I decided to create this company to create a real new intelligence, and we know how. So the company has been created, let's say, 4 years ago, a little bit less, and we already have results. One is less disruptive, but is already applicable in the industry. So we are already using our technology in the industry with a product which is called the phosphor quality for quality control on production line. But it's just an intermediary step with the disruption of our product. And the other one is longer term, and we are still working at that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because when I see that you don't rely on big data and still have this kind of continuous learning, I don't know how you measure that. Is this kind of a trade-off you have to do in that case in the design when you don't rely on big data in that case as much?
My question is not that I don't rely on big data or I don't like. It's because it's very powerful and there are many people doing that, many companies. So they're great. I'm not bringing anything. I want to bring something that I have to be different. So it's another way. And you know, if you are going and look at a new movie about aliens, then you will have an alien you have never seen. So the first time you'll be surprised, but the second time you know it. You recognize it. Like a child with a cat, he will see the cat, and the second time he will recognize it's a cat, even if it's another cat, another color, another shape. You know, so the brain is not working at all like deep learning. Not at all. It's not a proxy. It's not at all. It's really different. So, okay, let's try following how the brain is working. And there are many things known about how the brain is working. So that means there is a way to go. There is a path here.
So when it comes to accuracy or make sure that it's reliable, and we speak about scenarios, there's kind of damages, how to make sure the system is redundant as well. How you consider this point, make sure it's accurate, that's something happening here, like damage for inspections, certain stuff. Or if there's damage happening in the design itself, how it can have this kind of redundant behavior so that it can adapt and still function. I don't know, you have a scenario like that in the design process as well?
There are a lot of different aspects in what you're saying. I will speak about what we are doing at Another Brain as our artificial intelligence and not about deep learning and the conditions. The goal of our artificial intelligence, our system, is to go for self-learning and real-time learning, which means that what will be achieved will be based on what the system will have learned. So which experience it will have been exposed to. And then if you are exposing to wrong experience, if it means something, then it will seem wrong. So that means, of course, it's important your system to expose it to experience and to have the system able to discover by itself lessons from experiences it has passed through. So you know, the learning and training phase of the system will be more or less the same that of a being. Let's say a dog. Take a dog, and if you train the dog to do wrong things, he will do wrong things. If you train him to do right things, he will do right things. So the question will be put in how to train and how to give experiences. And then our responsibility will be to make that if it's trained rightly, then it will behave rightly. So this is important. But now after that, the training is another question. Who will train and who will be in charge of the training? And when I'm speaking about training, I want to address another question to open another door, which is for me very important in robotics as well as in AI. Time frame. Yeah. Very often you ask to somebody, what do you think about AI? Is it smart, intelligent? What do you think about robots? Are they behaving as we need? And the answer is no, they're stupid, no intelligence, like an ant, even less, or robots are totally uninteresting. And the question here is the time frame. Are we addressing a question of right today? Of course, AI is not intelligent, and of course, robots are not sophisticated enough, let's say. Or are we speaking about what will be in the path that humankind is following with developing this AI and developing this robot? And for me, this is most important and most interesting question. Very often people are questioning about robot and AI, and they are expecting an answer about how it's today, which is very poor and basic. But the other one is giving an answer about how it will be in the future. So let's focus on how it will be in the future. So what is on the way humankind is following. So we will have sophisticated enough robots because we will overpass the hardware question and the AI question. And there is no reason for not being able to discover an AI which is working like human brain or like animal brains. So I don't know, let's say, to stay open if it will take months or years or decades. Let's stay open at this stage, but it will happen. So the real question is, what will that bring to humankind if we are at the right level? And for me, it will open everything. That means if we want to do spatial exploration, if we want to bring asteroids around the moon, cycling around the moon, and then digging and mining on these asteroids to avoid polluting the Earth with plants for raw materials, we will have that. It will happen thanks to robots and AI. But then the robots will be alone on an asteroid very far away from here. So they need to learn alone situations. They really need to have this free learning and getting lessons from what they experience and then be able to behave with that. So if we go further, then we understand that we really need all that. But if we go intermediary, we can have robots for surgical robots. The same. Now we already have surgical robots that are better than surgeons in some kind of operation. For the prostate operation, for instance, surgical robots have better results than human surgeons. So if we are concerned by this situation, of course, we will want to have robots behaving. So we need to continue improving the robots because humankind really need robots. And if we want them to be efficient, we need to have them learning. So we need to have AI being able to learn by themselves.
Great. And I'm curious in that case, when you try to maybe deploy the intelligence in another brain and create part of it, if there is any counterintuitive stages of understanding or the behavior, I don't know if you have any counterintuitive results, or you don't understand why I behave in a certain behavior. I don't know if you have any situation like that sort of design of the process.
One or two points. when I was with Aldebaran, I used to communicate a lot, so TV shows and so on to present. And it happened to me one day to be in the street, walking in the street, and having an old lady pointing me, "Hey, I recognize you. You are the guy of robots. I saw you at the TV yesterday." Whoa, so I was afraid, what is she going to tell me? What's happening? So I'm a dependent person. I'm a dependent person. That means I need to have a nurse coming every morning and caring about myself and so on. You cannot imagine how painful it is, how frustrating it is. I'm dependent of somebody else. If the nurse is coming late, I have to wait. If she doesn't want to come because whatever, then I'm fucked. If she wants to change her job, so I'm independent. So the reality is she was independent, but in her mind, she really feels that. And she told me, you cannot imagine how I'm expecting the time where I will have robots depending from me, and that will do what I want them to do. And when you think that way, it's totally changing, because I was the first to think that we need human contacts, humanization is important. So we prefer to have nurses caring about ourselves than to have robots. But there is a kind of relationship with a different authority that is coming when we are dependent of somebody, and it's not what they're expecting. So here I first discovered that, wow, maybe it's not what my intuition is telling me. I got the same with somebody who was from Google Robotics and who turned paraplegic after an accident. And he told me, you cannot imagine how ashamed you are the first time when somebody has to clean you. And I would have loved to have robots doing that. So it's the same story. And I have another story, counterintuitive too, with robots, about education, so totally different field. It was in Korea, and we had some of our robots used to teach English to children. And something happened, and we had the same with mathematics, but it was more important with the English. And when the child was pronouncing incorrectly, the robot was asking to repeat. But you know what? After the 10th time where it had to repeat, there was no constraint. There was no difficulty in the relationship. And when you are with a teacher, after the 5th time, okay, you repeat correctly, do an effort, and you know, there is some kind of tension behavior, which is not at all the case. And then we discovered the same with mathematics. That means the relationship between somebody and a robot is totally different, because it's obvious that the robot has no emotion. The robot is just an assistant, and you are the master. You are masterizing the relationship, which is changing totally how you put yourself in your brain. So this is something that was counterintuitive, and I think very positive for robots and the real need of robots.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah. So I'm curious, since we're close to the end, I have a few questions. The first one about what could be your other crazy ideas or aspiration for another brain after the release? I don't know, what kind of expectations you have, or maybe new generation for what you do. What kind of thought do you have in your mind?
Longer term of another brain, after having our piece of cortex that will bring real intelligence to things, so small intelligence if we have not very powerful chip, which will be the beginning. And by the way, the first outcome are expected 2021. I'm not speaking about 10 or 30 years. Before end of this year, we will have the first chip embedding our intelligence. But what is important to me is kind of giving everyone an additive intelligence, a second brain. That's why the name of the company, to give everyone a second brain, to take back control of your digital life, to have some complementary brain to help you in a world where we will have objects, cars, more and more intelligent, because there will be artificial intelligence everywhere. So everything will be more intelligent that you are, that we are, that I am. So the question here, if I want to be human-centric, which is my DNA, then I want to help people, giving them additional intelligence. So I want to have a chip. This one will be with the same architecture of AI that I have in that we are putting, but in a much more denser chip. It will be a large, very powerful chip. Then I want to give everyone artificial, but it will be local. Don't speak about cloud. I don't want cloud. I don't want to have my own data about myself, my brain, and my life in the cloud. I have far enough. So I don't want more. So I want to have that. I don't know if it will be plugged under my skin, or it will be in a jewel, or it will, I don't know where it will be, but it will be my own without communicating data outside, but really able to help me, giving me additional intelligence, kind of internal assistant, kind of Jimmy Cricket on my shoulder. You know, so this is what I really want to give to everyone and bring to humankind.
But it's interesting, but what kind of additional intelligence? Because I think as women, we are not smart enough, I believe. And I don't know if in an overall picture it would be helpful for everyone to be intelligent. And what kind of intelligence specifically do you think could elevate people to be specific about? What kind of intelligence do you think need to be improved for humans? You believe that?
Question of intelligence. What is intelligence? Well, my definition is how to behave in situation you are encountering for the first time. And you want to have, so we will have more and more complex situation we will be confronted to, because things will be more intelligent, because one day we will meet with aliens, one day humankind will meet with aliens. That means with creations that are not brain the same way and we'll have to deal with, but even more pragmatical things. We have problems today that we are not able to solve because of lack of intelligence, I mean, in my view, which is protection of environment, protecting the planet. And the second one is genetic engineering, let's say, DNA engineering. For the first one, the world is going in a very wrong direction, with the heating of the planet, with destruction of ecosystem, destructions of animals. And it's not a question of President of the United States not willing, well, in the past, now he wants, but not willing to go. It's not a question of French president, of British president, that they are stupid and so on. No, it's because there are so many things put together and interacting and so on, that is really a very difficult problem, a very tough subject to solve. So I think if we could bring to humankind additional intelligence, artificial intelligence, but additional intelligence to help solving this situation, it would be great. I think it would be needed. So one of the questions is this one, how to help solving the climate problems or protection of the planet problem. And the second one is with illness. That means for 50 years, we heard that we know about DNA. We know now how to engineer the DNA. So we will solve all the sicknesses, all the illnesses. So my English is not that great. So how, but 50 years after, we are still here. That means we are able to do great things, but we still have a lot of diseases we are not able to solve because genetic engineering is not yet ready. Why? Because it's incredibly complicated, incredibly difficult. So the same, I think if we want to overpass all the diseases, we need to have additional artificial intelligence.
Yeah. I'm curious to ask you what kind of the most important qualities you have gained and you have to maintain for your journey in what you're doing. What kind of most important qualities like?
It's more or less the same than the lesson I got from this journey, which is accept yourself, know who you are, know your strengths and weaknesses, and accept your weaknesses and don't focus on that, but focus on your strengths and go full speed. Full speed, no limit, no boundaries, no intermediary, go full speed and trust yourself. If you don't succeed, you will be happy with what you are doing. And if you succeed, you will be even more happy. I think it's really the most important. And for the robotic community, we need hardware. We need new actuators. Robotics need new polymer electroactuators, need smooth actuators, soft actuators, absolutely needed and very important and huge market.
It was very inspiring, and I would like to thank you for your time. I even thank you.
Thank you for your interest.